Hey, it's Kisha here with Defending the Early Years podcast. We'll be focusing on amplifying the voices of early childhood educators, advocates, and all of those who love children.
Kisha Reid interviews Veronica McLaurin Brown and Peter Rocktwich about their advocacy efforts using a DEY mini grant in North Carolina.
Hello, Peter and Veronica. I'm so excited to have you here today at the Defending the Early Years Summer Institute. I am so excited to hear a little bit about your initiative that you have going. I know that you guys applied for and were awarded a Defending the Early Years mini grant. And if you could just share with us what this wonderful work you're doing and what came of that award.
Well, let's see, if you want to know what the work we're doing, our work grew out of a concern that young children in the New Hanover County schools in New Hanover County, North Carolina, were receiving out of school suspensions for minor offenses, such as insubordination or inappropriate language or showing disrespect, the kind of childhood behavior you might expect from a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, or 7-year-old, and clearly a learning opportunity for all of those children. So the work we were doing primarily was to educate the public that what we found was, as we talked to community leaders, faith leaders, business leaders, and just other members of the community, no one was aware that 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds were being kicked out of school for minor offenses. And so I think our main emphasis was getting the word out. And we did that through many different ways. Initially, we sat down with each board member, the school board member, to talk to them because the school board had the authority to change that policy. But we sat down, as I say, with individuals to have meetings. Veronica and I are both retired educators, so we had the flexibility to meet with lots of different people every week. But we also had printed material that we put out. We went to community events and had information tables. We had an opportunity to speak to different community groups. We were part of two public forums in our community where we spoke with other leaders in the community about this issue to educate the public. We also have on social media utilized Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course we spoke publicly once a month at the Board of Education meetings, and our speeches were recorded, and then we included that on our YouTube channel. So I'll let Veronica maybe add to that story, but educating the public was really mission number one.
Right, and I would like to add, when we started the advocacy in March, the board voted 7-0 to do nothing about suspensions. The group that was advocating for ending suspensions for elementary schools was actually the NAACP advocacy, parent advocacy group. Pete and I, after that vote, met and decided that we want to continue the advocacy. We made a pact with each other that we would work on this issue until we solved it and they changed the policy, or someone was throwing dirt on top of our bodies. And so he's given you a wonderful idea of all the things that we did. But I think one of the most important things that we did is that we listened to all the groups that we talked to and interacted with, and we continued to modify our messaging so that when we first started, we were speaking first about ending out-of-school suspensions. And someone said, well, you might be going down a rabbit hole with that. And we listened, and we started our advocacy with keeping students in school, keeping our young children in school. So I think that was one of the most important things that we did, is that we listened to everyone. We talked to everyone. We had a small core group of people, but we enjoyed each other every meeting was exhilarating. And he talked about us having a billboard and having posters and signs and shirts. And the exciting thing about that is that thanks to your $500, we were able to help with our expenses. And other than that, basically what happened was whenever we had an idea, we were fortunate enough that someone in the group found the money to pay for it. We never had a discussion about it. We just talked about our planning. I like to say one of the most important things that we did is we worked every day on our advocacy. We talked about the grain. For me, it was like a grain of sand moment, filling the bucket. And so I can say every day except for Christmas and the day before Christmas, from March to March, I made sure that if I couldn't fill the bucket up with sand, I put a grain of sand in it, and our entire team had that same expectation of working on this project.
So what it sounds like is that you guys used lots of avenues, lots of ways to talk to the people. And the most important thing that you said, and that I hope that people take away, is the listening portion. You guys had a message and something to say, but listening to how people received it and altering it to make it heard, to me, is a gold mine. I'm gonna write a note here for myself, because that's a wonderful perspective that I hope everybody takes away with them. So how long were you working on this initiative before you started to see some change and some shift in the mindset of the people who you had been speaking and listening to?
Well, we started in, Veronica and I started working together in March of 2021. Veronica already mentioned that that's when the school board had its decisive vote to pretty much maintain the current, what was then the current out of school suspension policy. And I would say our campaign working went on for 13 months. That meant for 13 months, we were making phone calls, meeting with people, showing up monthly at the board meetings. And I would say that probably after the first 2 or 3 months, we started to gain some momentum, little at a time. As our numbers grew and more people showed up at the school board meetings wearing our Love Our Children shirts or speaking publicly, it was picked up by the local press, saying that there's a growing interest in this issue. And so we were able to be interviewed on the radio, articles were written about our efforts. And it just seemed that each month we were gaining momentum, having more people showing up. And it got to the point, probably after 10 months of our initiative, that the board president thought that there was too much of us at the board. They actually tried to change the policy as to who could speak to the board and for how long, and made false claims about how we were monopolizing the discussion. There were two sides of that coin. One was, after 8 months, 10 months, why hadn't the board done anything? The fact was they were just kicking the can down the road. They were ineffective, took no action on our request. And it got to the point where even a board member said, "Oh my God, they've even got a billboard up now." I mean, the board clearly noticed it was more than just our showing up, that we were doing community organizing as well. So it did grow gradually. And in terms of the timeline, it was about a year to the day that they took a new vote on the policy, and that vote went 4 people wanted to keep the vote the same and 3 people were ready to change it, which meant we had flipped 3 votes and we only needed 1 more vote to change the policy. And much to our delight, the following month, a 4th board member said, I want to vote on this again. Pretty much unheard of that the school board would vote on the same policy in 2 consecutive months. And I think what might have helped flip the vote was that we had current data about their suspension policy that showed that they had made some changes internally and were making progress. And when it was clear that we had our 4 votes at that meeting, which was 13 months after the initial vote, all of the board members voted unanimously to change it. So our storyline really is we flipped all 7 votes in 13 months. And the takeaway there was just our persistence, showing up month after month after month, never giving up, and always sitting in the front row, always with our shirts on, always signing up. They knew who we were when we came to the podium. They stopped, we stopped introducing ourselves, saying, "Hi, my name is," they just knew who we were and they knew why we were there.
And I'd like to add that one of the things that we did was we were non-political. We talked to everyone. A second thing that we did, we made sure that we were respectful. We focused on the facts. And every time we heard something that was inconsistent with the facts, what we did is spent most of our times doing the research and providing the facts rather than just saying that that's not truthful. We said, here are the facts. So I think that strategy enabled us to maintain a respectful and relationship with the board members and other staff that was one of respect, and they understood that we were really just trying to help children. And I think the other thing that we did that was very effective is we selected one thing and we said we were going to work on that. We targeted, we were focused, everybody understood what it was. It was easy to explain. And I think that helped us. We didn't try, when we first started, we went to our first meeting, people were asking us so many questions, and one of our team members, Loretta Stackhouse, said, "We're just like an ant taking a bite out of an elephant." And once she said that, we start using that in our actions when we went into groups and they wanted to talk about all the huge and numerous problems of our school system. We were able to use our conversation, our meme, to help them understand that we were focusing on this single problem.
Mm-hmm. And how did you guys decide the single problem that you would focus on? What drove you to this particular cause?
Well, that's probably my story, because before that March vote in 2021, I had started to attend some local NAACP meetings. There was a group within the NAACP called the Parents Council. And when I started attending their meetings, they were working on a project to end suspensions for pre-K through 5th grade. And they wanted to end all suspensions. That would have included in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. So they had a much larger goal than we had. And so I had offered to help as part of their effort, and I ended up doing the research. So that's sort of where I started finding all the information, public information from the state education department and from the school district itself. And it turned out that when the vote, the initial vote went 7-0 to keep the suspension policy the same, the local NAACP kind of said, well, I guess, we're not going to be able to change this. We're going to have to do something else or work on something different. And Veronica and I were just getting fired up at that point. And so really that was a huge catalyst for Veronica and I to start working, saying, no, what the NAACP did was actually they missed a couple of steps. They never reached out to the community. And so we were determined to go out into the community and talk to people and educate them. As I said, what we found was people had never heard of this before, and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that our early childhood students would be kicked out of school for things that actually were learning opportunities, teachable moments.
Yeah.
So it was very easy to find support because people were just in disbelief that our school district was suspending hundreds of students. In the 2018-2019 school year, there were over 800 elementary school suspensions. And the most disturbing part was the disparate application of the out-of-school suspension policy. 18% of those students were Black students, but they represented over 60% of all of the out-of-school suspensions. And that was just disgusting.
Yeah, yeah.
It's unacceptable.
And you might say that we just made the perfect pair because Peter had come, he'd been here how many months? About 5 months, Peter?
At that point, it was probably about a half a year when we-
half a year. I had spent all of my career in Wilmington, except for 1 year in the educational system. And I happened on, because of the pandemic, the meeting when Peter was given all the data. And it was easy for me to connect because it was data that I had been fighting against for so many decades. I left the school system and I came back. I was just shocked that the disparity had almost doubled. It had increased so. And so I think that added to my outrage, and the pandemic added to an opportunity for me to become engaged and just commit to trying to bring about change for our students in our school system.
Well, congratulations, because you guys surely made change. You did not give up. What are your next steps? I think I read somewhere something about Veronica. What are your next steps, guys? What is the next bite going to be off that elephant?
Okay, I can tell you, for me, because I was working on the advocacy for Love Our Children team, and I was in the school board meetings for 13 consecutive months. I was at their interim meetings and I listened to all their committee meetings. You might say I had a Rosa Parks moment, or an epiphany moment, or even somebody touched me from above, but I decided to run for the school board, and Peter actually is my campaign chairperson. Wow. So we're still working
the
together.
dynamic duo,
dynamic, and another young lady that was with Love Our Children, Loretta, also is my treasurer. So we're moving forward to not just try to do one policy, but to help me move and get a seat on the board and concentrate on more policies that help children. So that's my next step. And I'm going to let Peter talk about the vision for Love Our Children. And the other thing that we're doing deliberately is I'm stepping back from being the face of Love Our Children doing my campaign, because it's very important to us to know that when we talk about children and caring for children and education, it has nothing to do with politics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Love Our Children's work is not done with this issue. It might not come as a surprise that when the board voted in our favor, flipping all 7 votes, there was no celebration from the school district announcing, we were ending, suspensions of our youngest students. They kept quiet about that. I think one of our first jobs for the new school year will be to make sure that we educate the community again that the policy has changed, and then to be available as advocates for any families that believe that maybe their children were unjustly or unfairly suspended in the new school year, to advocate for them by asking that the new policy, in fact, be enforced. So I think that education process is, again, going to take a daily effort to do that. Again, reaching out to everyone and just using our resources and our connections to help families that may feel that their child has been singled out for an inappropriate reason and possibly kicked out of school. In addition to that, I think it's important to note that 11 states and the District of Columbia already have statutes that outlaw out of school suspensions for their youngest learners. However, in North Carolina, we're the first of 100 counties that have changed that policy. And so I would love our group to try to identify at least one more county that we could work with and help share our resources and our information in hopes that maybe one county at a time we can begin to see this policy flipped and then eventually work up to our General Assembly at the Capitol to actually change it at the state level as well.
It sounds like you guys have a wonderful blueprint. And I thank you so much for your time and for telling us about this wonderful, wonderful advocacy work you're doing. I look forward to continue watching you guys and to seeing you make a wave of change. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
We continue to be inspired by the advocacy work on behalf of young children in Illinois. Last year, Cassie Creswell from the Illinois Families for Public Education joined the Institute to discuss their efforts to get a right to play bill passed. Well, this year, they continued their amazing advocacy efforts to prohibit the Illinois State Board of Education from requiring students in kindergarten through second grade from taking standardized tests. After the State Board of Education began considering tests for young students, Cassie and other advocates got to work. The Too Young to Test Act was signed into law in May of this year and took place immediately. Thank you to everyone in Illinois who continues to advocate for the childhood all children deserve. One way DEY supports advocacy is to offer mini grants to help foster your good work in your community as related to DEY's 3 principal goals. First, to advocate at the grassroots, local, state, regional, and federal levels for education policies based on child development theory and research. Second, to mobilize the early childhood community to speak up for age-appropriate standards, assessments, and classroom practices that are based on the research. And third, to promote appropriate practices in early childhood classrooms and to support educators in counteracting policies and practices that undermine whole child health and optimal learning. In 2021, we awarded Austin Peay State University Little Gov's Child Learning Center a grant to hold a family play day from Amazon to Amazing on September 25th, 2021. Funds from the DEY mini grant were used to purchase materials for the play day, including cardboard boxes, paints, brushes, tape, and markers. You can see more photos from their amazing play day on our website. The DEY podcast with Kisha Reid features educators, advocates, and other change makers about their grassroots projects, innovations in education, and reimagining early childhood environments. Early in this year, Kisha invited Atiya Wells, founder and executive director of Backyard Base Camp in Baltimore, Maryland. Atiya is a pediatric nurse with a passion to introduce, educate, and connect families in Baltimore, especially those of color, to local outdoor spaces. You can learn more about the 10-acre Bliss Meadow land reclamation project on our advocacy map and by listening to the podcast. A DEY mini grant is not limited to the United States. In April of this year, we were able to give a grant to Mercy Youth Initiative in Kenya. Mercy Youth Initiative is a community-based oriented organization implementing high-quality early childhood and youth enrichment, education, and training programs. With their DEY mini grant, they hosted a community-wide event that brought together a total of 20 early childhood education teachers from 20 schools. You can read more about their workshop on our mini grant page on our website. We love hearing about legislative advocacy efforts. Listen to New Hampshire State Representative Victoria Sullivan speak about her efforts to get a play-based kindergarten bill passed in 2018.
So when we had the Common Core standards come in, we started hearing about these rigors for kindergarten, which was concerning to me as a parent. But my children are almost 2 years apart, and I saw the difference in kindergarten between my oldest son and my younger son. And they had half-day kindergarten, and they had a wonderful teacher, and she actually helped me with this bill because she started to see how the curriculum had changed and how much stress was being placed on these children. They didn't have to, when Buddy was in kindergarten, they did a play called, the Nutcracker play at Christmas time, and they did a wonderful job. They had time to play outside. They had more creativity. When Seamus came up, it was really all about math and reading and making sure that they ticked off these boxes, and they really lost the socialization of class. And I think because we've lost some components of creativity and socialization, we're starting to see more problems with bullying and things on the playground. And so when the governor had the push for all-day kindergarten, I became more concerned about the stresses and the rigors on these kids for a full day. And when that legislation originally went through, I tried to amend it to say that there would be an option for parents who needed half day for their kids, because not everyone's ready for it. Some kids are still technically four when they enter, kindergarten, turning 5 during September. Other kids are almost 6. So there's a big swing there. I also tried to get play-based in at that time. And I got half of it. I got a component that says if parents go to the principal, they can't have the half-day kindergarten. I don't know if all parents are aware of that when they're starting their children, but that is the law. That is up to them. If they want to have the half-day within if your school offers full day, you can still say, I'd like to have my child in only half of a day. The play-based was killed, though. I was actually pretty beat up for wanting to have play-based kindergarten in there. I did a thing on Close-Up, and Adam Sexton really started the ball rolling with the conversation, because when I first introduced it, and there were little bits and pieces in the paper, people started emailing me saying I didn't know what I was talking about. Kindergarten's always been play-based, because they thought that it was what it still was. And so the conversation started happening, and then I started talking to colleagues that were involved in education, and Mary Guile was a big advocate for play-based, and we worked together. It was a bipartisan bill that we put in, and this year it got so much support because I think people were really starting to talk about it and realize the changes that had happened. So it passed the House on a vote of, it passed my committee unanimously, and passed the House on a vote of 328 to 8. So I think people were really ready for it this year, and they really understood what had happened and why we needed to pull it back. I think the biggest component is going to be the movement in the classroom. And this is why we're doing the training. The DOE is doing the training. We really need administrators to understand, because teachers are all on board. I've gotten so much positive feedback really from across the country about this program. People are watching it nationally. So there are videos that have been released from the New Hampshire Department of Education to help teachers and administrators. But there's also things out there from Dr. Wisniewski, who's one of the premier people in play-based education in the country that I've had conversations with. She actually helped us with a conference call to get these things sorted out, so we did it the right way. And right now, kids are sitting in a classroom at centers, and they work at a center, and then they kind of shift, and it's quiet, and this isn't going to be as quiet. These kids aren't going to be sitting all day. They're going to be engaging each other. They're going to be building. They're going to be using their hands. They're going to be experimenting. They're going to be outdoors more. And it's really the way that kindergarten was intended to be. Kindergarten means a child's garden, and it was intended to be movement and outdoors, and just let them be creative and let the teachers see who they are and where their strengths are. At the same time, recognize where their weaknesses are, so they can give them, some guidance in that direction. So I think that's going to be, the biggest thing the biggest adjustment, I think, for the schools, for teachers to understand kids out of the chair is okay, and for the administrators to understand kids out of the chair is okay.
Kisha Reid interviewed Becky Gamache about advocating for equitable access to nature and play.
Hello, Becky Gamache. I'm so excited to be speaking with you again and get a little update on the amazing work that you're doing over there in Minnesota. Can you give us a refresher, like what's going on over there and what are some updates? Because I know you've been busy.
Hi, Kisha. I'm super happy to be talking about this. We are doing some great things in Duluth. Kind of some updates. This school year, we opened up in the fall. We opened up 3 playscapes at our most urban elementary schools. Our director, Sherry Williams, had written into our grant to build playscapes. If you've ever built one, sometimes they can be quite a expensive undertaking. So it was great to get that written into our Head Start grant. And so we built them at 3 of our elementary schools that just had regular elementary school playgrounds, and they don't have much green space. So now they're for infants to 5-year-olds, and they're full of natural elements, and they're all a little bit different, taking into account the kind of lay of the land of the school and the space that they were able to use. And we're seeing lots of neighborhood kids using the playscapes now that our weather has gotten nicer. When we opened them, it was November, so for us that's starting to get cold and icy. So we had a few visitors, but now in the spring there were lots of visitors, and I imagine all summer long they'll be quite loved by the neighborhood and the families that were in our program too.
Mm-hmm. So did you guys take out playground equipment and replace it with more nature-based equipment, or was it a blank slate before you started?
They were blank slates. We of course we're in elementary school, so we have to share the playground with all the elementary grades, and sometimes that gets a little tricky, especially with COVID. It was really tricky because groups couldn't go out together. So working with the principals of each school, our director found spots in each of the school area. One of them is like in this little kind of, I would call it an alcove, that you would never even expect to put a playscape, but it had some great features open up there, like a climbing wall, because it was a cement retaining wall, and some other spaces in there that they could use to make like a fort area and things like that. And another one is kind of off to the side of the school in this scrub brushy area, and we had 3 owls design it, and they designed all our playscapes. And they left a lot of that brush, so it's kind of this little hidey spot for kids. And there's spots they kind of, it's hard for me to get in there, so I don't usually use that entrance, but they love to crawl in there, and built on a hill. And it was funny because they didn't think the kids would use the hill. And as soon as I saw it, I thought that's going to be the thing, and it is. It turned into a mudslide hill, and then a snow slide hill. And it's so steep, the kids have to like cling to the fence to climb along. So it's really enticing to be able to go there.
So you use space that was unused before and really enhance the environment. That is amazing. So what has been the response? I heard you say that the community is starting to use the space. What has been the response as far as the school as a whole? Because this was built for the preschool age children, but everyone gets to benefit from it. So are the teachers noticing any changes in the children?
Yes, they, well, like I did a survey. So that's one of the things that I do in my position is to, just find out things. And so finding out, our teachers going outside more than they used to now that we have the playscape, and also this kind of green light to be like, yeah, you can move your day outside if you want. And they all, I wish I had the statistic in front of me, but they're all going outside more and then more and more. And we were lucky this spring to get some extra funds too. And so many of the teachers ordered more outdoor gear. So they're saying, yep, we love the outdoor gear that we got with our grant, like the rain suits and things like that, but we want more because we want to go outside in all kinds of weather. And, Minnesota gets quite cold, so snowsuits and really good mittens and good boots. So they'll have some of them will have classroom sets of those.
That's wonderful. Is this something that you see spreading, just continuing to go from school to school? Do you think it's contagious?
I think it is. I just am in my own little pocket and world sometimes, but just doing some other trainings and things with other people throughout the state. Minnesota right now is exploding, and we have, I think we're like 3rd highest in the nation for outdoor preschool programs. And we did a spring conference, and we had some breakout sessions, and people working with public school programs was one of them. And sometimes I always think these conferences draw more people already doing the work, or they're going to have a private program, but it was one of the biggest breakout groups. So we had lots of public school people wondering about how to do it or giving advice because they were already doing it. So yeah, it's definitely spreading, and I feel like if it can spread in a place like Minnesota with such extremes, it can spread everywhere.
Yes, it could be a wonderful model for places like Maryland or anywhere really, anywhere in the US and anywhere in the world really. So, wow, wonderful work. So, all right, what is your like you've done, you guys have worked as a team and got this big goal going. Where do you see this going? How do you see it growing? How do you what's your next move?
Well, I think more for our program, more training for teachers. They always are looking for more things to do, how to do things better outside, not only outside, but how to incorporate play more. Sometimes in the public school, we operate under this umbrella of, we have to meet all of these different outcomes, and we do. And I think now our teachers are seeing that they can meet those outcomes through play, also through being outside, bringing nature into the classroom. So I really think just more support in that area. That's what my role is with our district. So more professional development, more coaching. I do some coaching with teachers too, just to support the work that they're doing and to be that encouragement, say, yeah, what you're doing is important and it matters, and look at the results. Like our assessment results I think they're amazing, and they're amazing for all kids from our, we have 3 different funding streams. We have Head Start, and then we have 2 different state funding streams. And within one of those state funding streams, it's parents on a sliding fee. So we have all economic backgrounds, and all of our kids are having great outcomes and they're growing.
Wonderful. And what do you think the role of research has in this project or anything that you guys are doing moving forward, or even in the seriousness that people took to this project? Like, how do you think research has affected that?
Well, I think, we're always hearing everything has to be research-based. And so we've done some partnership with our local university and with David Sobel and Antioch University to do some different kinds of research. And, we're seeing similar or better outcomes, versus traditional. I always laugh at traditional preschool programs because I always say traditional, what were play-based, but now traditional means academic-based, academic-based versus play-based. So I think that research piece is really important because if we have to, I don't like to say like we have to prove what we're doing is right and the best thing for kids, but we do, because we have people who aren't in this field and who hold on to the funding streams, and so they need to see that play is important, and play is how children grow.
Wow. Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming back and updating us. And I can't wait to hear more and continue to follow this journey and to watch this spread and spread and spread. Thank you so much, Becky, for all your work and your passion.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed learning about the amazing work of our advocacy partners. Do you have an advocacy idea related to our mission that you need support with? Apply for a DEY mini grant. Are you doing advocacy work or know of early childhood advocacy work in your community? Add the organization or the legislation to our advocacy map. Do you want to learn more about advocacy and the work of early childhood advocates across the country? Then make sure you listen to the DEY podcast. More information can be found on our website at www.dey.org. Thank you.